On September 11, 2001, New York Times chief White House correspondent David E. Sanger was with President George W. Bush as he was visiting school children in Florida when they received the news that a terrorist attack was underway. Sanger has covered the 10 years of ensuing war, spanning 2 presidential administrations. Most recently reporting on the Obama administration, Sanger sees a transition to new tactics for addressing such conflicts.
Well, I think what you've seen happen since President Obama took over is that he has begun to lay out a new doctrine of how the U.S. is going about these conflicts.
With all troops scheduled for withdrawal from Iraq by the end of the year, Sanger reflects on the war. The costs were high, but the future seems to promise a more high-tech and collaborative form of intervention that will reduce casualties and prevent complicated occupations. According to a study done by Sanger and his colleagues, the total cost of all U.S. operations in response to 9/11 was $3.3 trillion, almost 1/5 of the U.S. debt.
If you looked at what part of that was in direct response to 9/11, that is to say, putting together Homeland Security, rebuilding the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, compensating the victims, that amount was probably a good deal less than $1 trillion of it.
The rest of the $3.3 trillion price tag was put towards what Sanger called reaction, or, as Sanger noted some might say, overreaction.
1.6 trillion of that was really Iraq. A huge bill, hundreds of billions of dollars.
In addition to the monetary cost of the war, Sanger laments the missed opportunities that came from focusing so intently on the Middle East. According to Sanger, this diverted attention hurt America's interests in other areas.
You can't think about doing many peacekeeping operations. You can't think about harder foreign policy problems like dealing with China that don't require troops but do require a huge amount of time and maybe a significant investment.
However, developments in technology may hold an answer. Sanger sees high-tech methods like drones and cyber warfare as ways to both keep costs and U.S. casualties down and to avoid complicated situations like the one the United States is currently winding down in Iraq.
So the idea is move to America's technological advantage and move away from ground wars, which create great resentment from those who feel occupied, and also create an expectation that the U.S. would come in and rebuild the country.
Sanger already sees a model for this type of campaign in the recent intervention in Libya.
Libya was sort of the un-Iraq, and by that I meant no ground troops, let other countries take the lead, support from unique American technological assets.
One of the biggest changes from the Iraq War was America's decision to allow NATO international military forces to take a leading role in the intervention. This isn't something that the U.S. has done much in the past.
NATO had been offering for years or demanding for years, why doesn't the United States step back and stop being so suffocating and let other countries take the lead? And President Obama was the first one to come along and say, we think that's a fabulous idea. Why don't you guys go do it?
Still, Sanger doesn't see an end to American unilateral involvement in other nations' affairs. What he does predict is for the U.S. to be more prudent in deciding when such involvement is necessary.
The trick here has been to try to sort out in people's minds when it is that the United States still feels that it is both justified and capable of conducting unilateral military action, and when it is that the United States feels that something is not in its direct national interest and it can rely primarily with allies.
It's an analysis supported with 29 years of experience covering U.S. foreign policy. The world has come a long way since Sanger first received the news of the World Trade Center attacks with President Bush. If Sanger is right, America has learned from its mistakes, and the challenges it faced with Iraq are less likely to be repeated. For War News Radio, I'm Collin Smith.